While the home is often seen as a sanctuary of love and protection, some of the most horrifying crimes have been committed by those trusted the most: parents. Across the United States, a number of individuals who committed familicide, the brutal act of murdering their own spouses and children, are now on death row. These tragic and shocking cases continue to haunt the public and ignite deep conversations about mental illness, abuse, and the justice system. Here are some of the most chilling cases of parents on death row for murdering their families. Susan Eubanks. State: California. Date of crime: October 27, 1997. Susan Denise Eubanks was born in the United States in the early 1960s and grew up in Southern California. Her early life was marked by instability, and reports from court documents and media sources describe a troubled upbringing that included emotional and behavioral issues. As an adult, she struggled with alcoholism, financial hardship, and volatile relationships. By the mid-1990s, Susan was a mother of 4 young boys, each from different relationships. She had a tumultuous romantic life, often marked by arguments and breakups. On the night of October 27, 1997, Susan Eubanks committed one of the most shocking familicides in California history. Following a turbulent breakup with her boyfriend and a history of financial struggles, emotional instability, and substance abuse, Eubanks spiraled into a dark mental state. That evening, she systematically shot and killed her 4 sons: Brandon, aged 14, Austin, aged 7, Brigham, aged 6, and Matthew, aged 4, inside their San Marcos home in San Diego County. She used a .38 caliber handgun to shoot each child in the head at close range. Evidence suggested the killings were premeditated, as Eubanks had locked the front door, removed the phone line, and deliberately isolated the children before the attack. After murdering her sons, she turned the gun on herself in an apparent suicide attempt, shooting herself in the stomach. However, she survived the wound. Authorities arrived at the home after a family member, concerned about the children, called for a welfare check. Inside, police found the 4 boys' lifeless bodies and Eubanks critically injured but alive. A suicide note was also discovered in which Eubanks blamed her ex-boyfriend and other people in her life for pushing her over the edge. Susan Eubanks was arrested while recovering in the hospital. She was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances for the multiple killings. In 1999, a jury found her guilty on all counts. The prosecution argued that she murdered her sons out of revenge and spite toward her boyfriend and others who had wronged her. The jury recommended the death penalty, and she was formally sentenced to death later that year. As of April 2025, Susan Eubanks remains on death row at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. Despite California's current moratorium on executions, she is among the few women awaiting execution for one of the most infamous cases of maternal familicide in U.S. history. Timothy Jones, Jr., State, South Carolina. Date of crime: August 28, 2014. Timothy Jones, Jr. was born in Illinois in 1981 and experienced a turbulent upbringing marked by emotional instability and behavioral issues. Raised in a strict and often chaotic environment, Jones had several run-ins with the law during his youth and struggled with substance abuse. Despite these early challenges, he managed to turn aspects of his life around, and he earned a degree in computer engineering and secured a well-paying job at Intel. Jones married Amber Kaiser, and the couple had 5 children together. However, their relationship deteriorated, and they divorced in 2012. Jones was granted custody of the children, largely due to his stable employment and ability to financially support them. Over time, Jones's behavior became increasingly erratic and controlling. He reportedly struggled with the pressures of single parenthood and exhibited signs of paranoia and mental deterioration. Though some family members and acquaintances noticed changes in his behavior, the full extent of his mental state remained unclear until the horrific events of 2014. His background, once a mix of resilience and success, ultimately spiraled into tragedy as his personal demons consumed him, leading to one of the most devastating cases of familicide in South Carolina's history. On August 28, 2014, Timothy Jones Jr., a 32-year-old father of 5, committed a series of heinous acts that resulted in the deaths of his children. Mara, 8. Elias, 7. Natan, 6. Gabriel, 2. and Abigail, 1. The tragic events unfolded in their mobile home in Lexington County, South Carolina. The sequence of events began when Jones discovered that Natan had broken an electrical outlet in the home. As punishment, Jones forced the 6-year-old to engage in rigorous physical exercises, including push-ups and squats, for hours. This excessive exertion led to Natan's death. In a state of panic and fearing the consequences, Jones proceeded to kill his other 4 children. He strangled Mara and Elias with his hands and used a belt to strangle Gabriel and Abigail. Following the murders, Jones wrapped the children's bodies in plastic bags and placed them in the back of his Cadillac Escalade. He then embarked on a multi-state journey, driving through South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi over the course of several days. During this time, he sought to evade detection and determine a method of disposing of the bodies. Eventually, he discarded the remains in a secluded area near Pineapple, Alabama. Jones's erratic behavior drew attention when he was stopped at a safety checkpoint in Smith County, Mississippi on September 6, 2014. Officers detected the smell of decomposition emanating from his vehicle and observed bloodstains, bleach, and children's belongings inside. This led to his arrest and the subsequent discovery of the children's bodies. In 2019, after a comprehensive trial, Jones was convicted on 5 counts of murder. The jury deliberated on the severity and premeditated nature of his actions, ultimately sentencing him to death. Jones appealed the conviction, raising multiple issues regarding juror qualifications, evidentiary rulings, and the exclusion of expert testimony. However, in July 2023, the South Carolina Supreme Court upheld both his conviction and death sentence, affirming the decisions made during the trial. As of April 2025, Timothy Jones Jr. remains on death row in South Carolina, awaiting execution for the murders of his 5 children. Darlie Routier, State, Texas, date of crime, June 6, 1996. Darlie Routier was born on January 4, 1970 in Altoona, Pennsylvania. She moved to Texas in her early adulthood and eventually married Darren Routier in 1988. The couple had 2 sons, Damon and Devin, and a 3rd child, a son named Drake. The Routiers were a typical suburban family, but their life was marred by financial difficulties as they struggled with mounting debts and bills. Despite these challenges, Darlie and Darren maintained a relatively normal family life. On the night of June 6, 1996, Darlie Routier's 2 young sons, Damon and Devin, were brutally murdered in their home in Rolette, Texas. According to Routier's account, an intruder entered the home and attacked her and the children. She claimed that after the intruder left, she managed to call 911 and report the crime. When police arrived, they found her and her 2 sons covered in blood. Damon and Devin had been stabbed multiple times, and their wounds were consistent with a vicious and calculated attack. Routier had a superficial wound on her own neck and a few cuts on her arm, which she claimed were inflicted during the altercation with the intruder. She was rushed to the hospital for treatment, and the authorities soon began their investigation. However, evidence quickly began to suggest that Routier's story was not entirely credible. Investigators found no signs of forced entry into the house, casting doubt on her claim of an intruder. The house was not ransacked, and there was no indication that anything had been stolen. Furthermore, a forensic analysis of the crime scene revealed that blood splatter patterns appeared to be inconsistent with an intruder's presence. Routier's behavior also raised suspicions. She reportedly acted unusually calm and composed during the investigation, and some of her statements were inconsistent with the evidence at the scene. Additionally, a large portion of the blood from the children's wounds appeared to be concentrated on the floor near the bodies, suggesting that the children were already deceased when Routier supposedly fought with the intruder. The prosecution theorized that Routier had killed her sons in a desperate bid to cover up her financial troubles. At the time of the murders, the Routier family was in significant financial distress, and it was suggested that Routier sought to collect insurance money after the deaths of her children. This theory was strengthened by the fact that she appeared to have no clear motive for the attack on her children, beyond the financial gain she might receive. The case was controversial from the start, as many people believed that Darlie Routier had been wrongfully convicted. Some have pointed to the lack of concrete evidence and the questionable forensic testimony used against her at trial. The case remains one of the most infamous in Texas, with ongoing legal challenges and calls for further investigation into her innocence. Routier was convicted of 2 counts of capital murder in 1997, based largely on forensic evidence and expert testimony that contradicted her claims of an intruder. The prosecution argued that Routier had killed her children for financial gain and to cover up her financial struggles. Darlie Routier remains on death row at the Mountain View Unit in Texas. Her case has been highly controversial, and she continues to maintain her innocence, claiming that she was wrongfully convicted. Over the years, there have been numerous legal appeals, including requests for new DNA testing that could potentially exonerate her. As of now, she is still awaiting execution, and the case remains a subject of ongoing debate, particularly surrounding the potential flaws in the original investigation and trial. Kathy Lynn Serenana. State, California. Date of crime, 2005. Kathy Lynn Serenana had a troubled background, marked by her involvement in a horrific case of child abuse and murder. Born in California, she faced personal struggles and had a tumultuous life, including the inability to provide a stable environment for her children. In 2005, Kathy Lynn Serenana and her husband, Raul Ricardo Serenana, took in Kathy's 2 nephews, 11-year-old Ricky Morales and 13-year-old Conrad Morales, after the boys' mother was unable to care for them. However, instead of providing a safe environment, the couple subjected the boys to severe and prolonged abuse. The abuse began shortly after the boys moved into the Serenana's home in Corona, California, and escalated over time. On December 25, 2005, Kathy and Raul Serenana beat Ricky after he allegedly refused to eat breakfast. The abuse was brutal, and he was left to die alone in a closet. His body was discovered the next day, showing signs of severe trauma, including bruises, cuts, and evidence of prior injuries. Ricky's cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma, consistent with the brutal beatings he had endured. The investigation later revealed that Conrad, Ricky's older brother, had been subjected to similar abuse over a prolonged period. Conrad had been missing for several months, and Kathy had falsely reported him as a runaway. In reality, Conrad had died earlier in the year, likely from similar violent abuse inflicted by the Serenanas. His body was discovered in the carport of their duplex in a state of decomposition, wrapped in plastic. It was determined that Conrad had been beaten and tortured to death before being hidden. Authorities discovered that the Serenanas had subjected the boys to physical violence for months, using belts, baseball bats, and electrical cords to inflict pain. The brutal nature of the crimes shocked the community and led to the couple being charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder and torture. Both Kathy and Raul Serenana were arrested and charged with the murders of Ricky and Conrad. Prosecutors sought the death penalty, and in June 2009, both were convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture. They were subsequently sentenced to death. As of February 2025, Kathy Lynn Serenana remains on death row in California. Her case continues to draw attention due to the severity of the crimes and ongoing discussions about the use of the death penalty in the state. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of child abuse and murder in California's history. Veronica Gonzalez, State, California. Date of crime, July 21, 1995. Veronica Gonzalez was born around 1969 in California and lived in the Chula Vista area. The details of Gonzalez's background suggest a deeply dysfunctional household dynamic, one in which control and violence played significant roles. While not much is available about her childhood or upbringing, her actions as an adult, particularly the systemic and torturous abuse inflicted upon a vulnerable child, ultimately defined her public and criminal legacy. In 1995, Veronica Gonzalez and her husband, Ivan Gonzalez, were entrusted with the care of their 4-year-old niece, Genevieve Jenny Rojas, in their Chula Vista, California home. Jenny's mother was undergoing drug rehabilitation, and her father was incarcerated for child molestation, leading to her placement with the Gonzalez family. During her time with the Gonzalezes, Jenny was subjected to prolonged and severe abuse. Testimonies during the trial revealed that she was forced to live in a box, hung by her hands from a hook in a closet, burned with a hairdryer, and systematically starved. The culmination of this abuse occurred when Jenny was scalded to death in a bathtub. Veronica Gonzalez was arrested and charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture and mayhem. In May 1998, a jury convicted her of these charges. The same jury recommended the death penalty, a decision that was formalized during her sentencing in July 1998. Her husband, Ivan Gonzalez, was tried separately, convicted, and also sentenced to death earlier that year. As of 2025, Veronica Gonzalez remains on death row at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. Her conviction and sentence have undergone automatic appeals, a standard procedure for death penalty cases. In 2011, the California Supreme Court upheld her conviction and death sentence. Veronica and Ivan Gonzalez are noted as the first married couple in California to be sentenced to death for the same crime. Jessica Marie Hahn, State, California. Date of crime, February 2001. Jessica Marie Hahn, formerly known as Jason Michael Hahn, was born in 1982 and grew up in California. Her early life was marked by a series of personal struggles, including a history of anger issues and strained relationships with family members. In her late teens, she transitioned from male to female, a process that would become part of her personal identity as she faced a tumultuous upbringing. Jessica Marie Hahn originally was convicted for the brutal murder of his 10-week-old daughter, which occurred in Desert Hot Springs, California, in 2001. According to the prosecution, Hahn, who was 19 years old at the time of the crime, was alone with his infant daughter when he inflicted fatal injuries upon her. The young child had sustained multiple broken ribs, a traumatic head injury, and severe internal bleeding. The infant's injuries were consistent with abusive head trauma, and the cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Medical examiners testified that the abuse was not accidental and was inflicted intentionally. Despite his initial claim that the child had fallen off a couch and hit her head, the evidence gathered from the scene, coupled with the severity of the injuries, led investigators to believe that the baby had been violently assaulted. Hahn's motive for the crime was unclear, but during the investigation, it was revealed that he had a history of anger issues and domestic violence. His behavior toward his family was described as erratic and volatile, and it became evident that his relationship with the child's mother had been strained. Hahn's actions on the day of the murder were particularly chilling. After the baby was dead, he allegedly staged the scene to make it appear as if the death were accidental. The case gained attention not only for the horrific nature of the crime, but also because of the gender transition of the perpetrator, who transitioned to Jessica Marie Hahn while awaiting trial. She was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death in 2013 for the murder of her daughter. a sentence that remains in place today as she remains on death row in California. Belinda Magana, State, California. Date of crime, May 9, 2009.
36-year-old Belinda Magana is on death row for the 2009 murder of her toddler son. For 5 days, Malachi was scalded and subjected to beatings before he died.
Belinda Jeanette Magana was born in California and led a troubled life marked by a history of abusive relationships. In May 2009, a tragic and harrowing incident unfolded in Corona, California, involving the death of 2-year-old Malachi Magana. His mother, Belinda Jeanette Magana, and her boyfriend, Naresh Michael Nareen, subjected Malachi to a week-long ordeal of severe abuse. The abuse intensified over 6 days, culminating in fatal injuries. On May 9, 2009, Malachi was found unresponsive, his body bearing numerous signs of abuse, including burns and bruises. In an attempt to conceal their actions, Magana and Nareen disposed of Malachi's body in a remote area near Little Creek, San Bernardino County, and falsely reported him missing, claiming he had been abducted during a family gathering. However, inconsistencies in their statements and a lack of evidence supporting their account led investigators to uncover the truth. Both Magana and Nareen were arrested and charged with first-degree murder, with torture and assault of a child, resulting in great bodily injury. In May 2015, after a trial that revealed the extent of Malachi's suffering, both defendants were sentenced to death. Malachi's short life was marked by unimaginable abuse, and his death serves as a heart-wrenching reminder of the potential consequences of domestic violence and child abuse. As of March 7, 2025, Belinda Jeanette Magana remains on death row in California. In 2015, she and her then-boyfriend, Naresh Michael Nareen, were convicted for the 2009 murder of her 2-year-old son, Malachi Magana, and both received death sentences. Additionally, in 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a moratorium on the death penalty in California, granting stays of execution to all death row inmates. However, despite this moratorium, Magana remains officially on death row. These tragic cases serve as a reminder of the devastation caused by familicide and the complex circumstances that lead to such heinous acts. They also raise important questions about the death penalty, mental health, and the justice system's role in preventing and addressing these crimes. If you found this topic insightful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories and in-depth analyses.